Great. So it's again great to see all of you. I think we are live now. We have Aratrik and Nanda and Harini with us. A few others might join. Oh, I see they're here already. Pranit is here and Mansha is here. Hello, Pranit. Hello, Man. So thank you all for joining in. We just wanted to know a little bit more about INMO preparation, of course, and your Olympiad journey and how you are managing your time. It must be hectic. Some of you are in high school and stuff like that. So we want to learn more about that. And of course, there are parents and other students who are also joining in. So they wanted to learn a little bit more about how you might start preparing for this sort of stuff. So I will start with Nand. Could you tell me a bit more about your, the age from when you started preparing for Olympiads, and then maybe a few books that you may have been using, and how to keep the mind in that direction. So yeah, can you tell me a bit more?
Yeah, sure. So I started Olympiad preparations quite late relative to most other people. I started it after my 10th grade vacations or during my 10th grade vacations, so 10th to 11th. So after I
Okay.
finished my 10th grade. Um, yeah, so over the course of 2 years, so this is my second year as in more body, and what I focused on the initial 1 year. So the year that I became an INMO body was I focused on each of the specific stages, and this year I focused more on INMO and IMO TC as my preparation targets. The books that I used initially for preparation was I used A Beautiful Journey Through Olympiad Geometry and Euclidean Geometry and Math Olympiad for Geometry. For number theory, I used Number Theory Concepts and Problems and Number Theory Structures, Examples, and Problems, both by T2 and Rescue. I
Right.
used Mont briefly as well, but then I never ended up finishing the book. Um, Algebra, I've just switched between books based on mood. Algebra, I've just found solving problems was the way that I wanted to go with it. I did do secrets and inequalities for inequalities specifically in algebra. And then for combinatorics, I started out with Olympiad Combinatorics by Pranav Sriram. Yeah.
That's fantastic. It's a lot of books, and it's also very interesting that you started the journey pretty late, and but that then you went up to IMOTC, and maybe it must have been a very interesting journey, short but interesting journey for you. Uh, Thank you for your comments. Let's go to Pranit. So Pranit, could you tell us a little bit more about your when at what age did you start and what books you have been following?
So I started in sixth grade actually. So sixth, seventh was like I was just doing math on my own for fun. I wasn't doing anything very serious as such. Like I was preparing for PRMO, but I wasn't in any class or anything.
Okay.
Then my first two attempts I did not get through.
Okay.
So on my third attempt, I uh, cleared INMO also. So mainly, I don't think books are that useful. Like up to a
Okay.
point, maybe, but I don't think books are that useful. Like probably, like for me at least, just solving problems every day was more helpful.
Right. That's fantastic. Actually, I want to circle back to this particular point to all of you. I want to learn from all of you that what if so some people say that maybe you go through all the concepts and then you go to the problem sets, but some of you, just like Pranit said, that you just start thinking about problems, and then so that is a very interesting thing to think about how you start. But let me go to Mansha. Man, could you tell us a bit more about when you started your journey and what books or problem sets you've been following?
Yeah, so I started in around sixth grade as well, and I was preparing for NMTC, which is the National Mathematics Talent Contest. I actually didn't know much about IOQM and CRMO and like the Indian Mathematical Olympiad program at this point in time. But then in seventh grade, I got to know about this, and then um, I thought that I wanted to like do this sort of thing, and yeah, I mean the books I used are mainly like for geometry. I used only uh, Euclidean geometry in mathematical Olympiads by Chen, and for number theory, I used Mont by Aditya Kurmi, Modern Olympiad Number Theory, and I think for algebra and combinatorics, I didn't do anything specific. Although this year I did do like a bit a part of combinatorics by Pranav Sriram, and that did help. Like before, I thought that book was kind of intimidating, but this year I finally got the courage to start working on it, and I actually finished some part of it. So yeah, that's basically everything I used. And for algebra, I don't think I used anything specific at any point in time. Like algebra, I didn't really do anything specific for that. I just um,
I see.
did miscellaneous problems.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And Harini, can you hear me? Are you there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
hi.
yeah. Awesome. So yeah, same question for you. When did you start preparing, and maybe the books or problems that you were using? Could you share that?
I started preparing technically in sixth or seventh, but properly only from eighth grade.
Okay.
And like these books have been said only for geometry, IGMO by Evan Chen, for NT structures, examples and problems, for combinatorics, a walk through combinatorics,
Okay.
and for algebra, really no book, just problems.
I see. Interesting, because Ivanshan's book and Andriskew's book has been mentioned quite a few times in this discussion. I'll probably go to Aratrik and learn from him. Aratrik, what are your ideas?
Yeah, so I started initially it was not focused towards Olympiad but more towards puzzles. So like when I was in around grade 5 or 6, so I started with doing puzzles such as there was this Russian book called Fomin and Genkin. So that grew my interest in maths. And then in around 7 or 8 I started focusing more towards maths Olympiad. It was initially started with NMTC, and then in ninth I gave IOQM for the first time and then like qualified for INMO and again this year. And about the books I used for geometry, it was, as others have said, it was Ivan Chen's EGMO. For combinatorics, there's this Chinese book called Principles and Techniques in Combinatorics. So I started with that, and later for more advanced problems, I did Pranav. I am doing it still. Pranav Sriram's Olympiad Combinatorics. For NT, it was mainly I started with David Burton, and then I did Khurmi's Modern Olympiad Number Theory. And for algebra, it was mainly problems and just handouts here and there. That's all.
Fantastic, fantastic. One question that, of course, students, you can post your questions in the YouTube YouTube comment section, and I will forward them to the participants. But one question I really find circling among students is that how do you approach this? Um, suppose you are mm, you know stuck with a problem. Let's ask this question. I go back to Nand actually. What do you do when you are stuck with a problem, especially in the early days when you have just started your preparation? If you are stuck with a problem, how do you handle that?
Uh, I think early on I did manage to find friends of mine who were more into Olympiad, like who have been in the Olympiad circle longer than me. So whenever I was stuck on a problem, what I would do in the initial phase was that I would send my friends the problem and then I'd ask, "Can you guys give me a hint?" And these guys were generally stronger than me. So at that point, so whenever I'd ask them, they would be able to solve the question if I was struggling on it. So then they'll give me a hint, a guide in the right direction towards how to solve the problem. So that naturally helped build an intuition to how to tackle problems. And the second thing was I would sometimes look at the solution. I think especially in the initial phase, I was not someone who would spend days or weeks on the same problem. Now that's changed. I do find some problems where I spend a lot of time before going for any hints, but especially in the early phase, I used to take a lot of hints or look at solutions if I was stuck.
Fantastic. Let's go to Pranit and ask the same question. I mean, how do you handle in the early days and now? There is, of course, a difference. Now you have matured a lot. So, how do you do it?
Uh, so initially, unfortunately, I used to see solutions like after not too much time. Uh, so now, like let's say I spend around at least 1.5 hours or 2 hours, let's say, like on my own, just thinking about the problem. If I don't make any progress at all, then I would ask like on the community like for hints. And yeah, I would not suggest looking at solutions.
Okay. Okay. That's a great suggestion, I think. What about Man? What do you think? In the same question.
Yeah, I mean, initially I think I used to look at solutions pretty early because I think in the early stages what you need to do is like be exposed to a lot of ideas. Like there are some standard ideas that come up very often in problems, and sometimes those standard ideas are like quite hard to derive. So I think in the initial stage it is more efficient to look at the solution after trying for some specific amount of time. And right now I think what I do is like I tried for some fixed amount of time. If I find it more interesting or I think I am making progress on it, then I try it for some more time, or I will add it to my list of problems to try later. Like um, uh, I will try it later after a month or so after learning some new trick or some new ideas, and then I will again come back to that problem, or I will look at the solution if I don't find it interesting or I feel that I have not made any progress on it.
Okay. Okay. I understand. It's great. Harini, what about you? What
Yeah,
about
I
what if we
also
stuck on a problem? Yeah. Go ahead.
earlier I used to look at the solutions pretty fast, but now if I'm stuck on something, then normally I will switch to something else. Like I'll start trying another problem and come back to this with a fresh mind.
Or you come back to the problem again after some time, maybe. Is that
Yeah. After
okay?
I've tried a few others, after I've gotten a few other problems, I'll come back to it.
So it's like so does it works this particular strategy?
Seems to work. If it still doesn't work, then I will look at the solution or ask for hints.
Right, right, right. Excellent. What about you, Aratrik? What do you think?
Yeah, so in the earlier stages, it would be that so if I couldn't solve a problem for some time, that probably meant that I didn't know the theory used in the problem. So now it's like pretty hard to come up with the standard theory on your own. So I used to like look at the solution then, but now like we have the basic theory and the fundamentals. So it's usually the ideas that are hard to come up with. So what I'll do is I'll spend some time on the problem and I spend like hours or something. Then sometimes I'll go to a different problem and yeah. And also there's like something else I do if I'm on a time crunch. So like I keep this 15 or 20 minutes thumb rule that say I've tried it for some time. Now like for 15 or 20 minutes I've got no new ideas and I can't proceed. So then I'll start looking at the solution, and instead of looking at the complete solution, I'll look at usually the first one or two lines that will give me some hint, and I'll try it again and get some ideas.
Fantastic, fantastic. This is a great idea, actually. Um I think several of these ideas are kind of similar. That you try, and then if you cannot get it, you look up a hint or something like that. I will take up some of the questions here. So some people have already asked let's say, how do you prepare for algebra? So maybe initial books. All of you talked about books for combinatorics, books for number theory, books for geometry, but most of you said that you just tried problems for algebra. But let me rephrase the question. Uh, Initial theory of algebra, that is obviously needed. So, did you follow any particular book just to pick up the initial theoretical part? Any one of you can respond to this. Maybe I'll pick on you. Okay, Arathrik, what do you think?
Okay, so my algebra was pretty weak, and so it was. I started doing mainly problems, and then like when I used to get stuck, I used to look at the solution and learn. And if there was some theory I didn't know, I used to learn on that. And then for
Uh,
specific topics, after a certain point of time, I started looking at handouts. Like there were Ivan Chen's handouts, so the
okay.
functional equation handouts were really good. Then there was in for inequalities, there was secrets and inequalities. That's also a really good
Uh,
book. And for polynomials, there was Barbie's book, which is also pretty great for
Perfect.
introduction to polynomials.
Excellent. So that actually answers part of this question, that how do you prepare for inequalities? Secrets in inequalities has been mentioned quite a few times. And yeah, so that's fine. I'll just go to
Uh,
the next.
Olympiad
Yeah, sorry.
inequalities. Olympiad inequalities by Thomas Mildorf is also very good.
Olympiad inequalities by Meldorf. Okay, great. So let's go to the next question. Any of you did graduate level mathematics like real analysis? I don't know. Any one of you have done this?
I did
Maybe.
do generating functions. That's the only
Okay.
graduate level maths that I
All
did.
right. Generating functions are pretty standard, but I don't think real analysis in that standard is necessary. Okay. So let's go to. Uh, so okay. So here, this question has been answered. Books and resources question has been answered in the first part of this discussion. So you may want to turn there and ask, look at the responses. Quite a few great responses we have. Okay, so here is another question. I think partly some of you answered this. What do you do? What to do if you are stuck in a book like pre college mathematics for which the solutions are not available? Okay, so how do you handle this? So maybe I will go to, I'll pick on you. Okay, Pranit, what do you do if you started with pre college and could not find a
Oh,
solution?
when I said like I just didn't do anything. Like I just left it.
I mean,
But
just in general, if
probably
you see a book with solutions are not available,
you
which
should
is
probably join some club. Like there are now many clubs on Discord also. So perhaps you should join such a club and you can ask your doubt on.
right, you could ask in the community or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's always great to ask other people and get ideas, bouncing ideas. I think it's a great thing. Okay, okay. So uh, functional equations tricky sometimes. What do you recommend, Man? What do you think about functional equations? Let, I'll let you
Um,
take this question.
like I remember finding this handout by Peng Cheng Wu very helpful, and but I also found it a little bit hard on the harder side sometimes. Like it was slightly challenging to do, and I think if you are at a slightly more introductory level, then I think Ivan Chen's handout is a good place to start. And mainly, I think functional equations are just a mix of the at least the um, intermediate low to intermediate level functional equations are just a mixture of the first few things. Like only when you go to the higher levels is that things come like things like real analysis and stuff. Like sometimes I've seen it used like continuity and real analysis, and like I mean not actually continuity, but like some concepts from real analysis and all that start being used. And for lower to intermediate, I think just the basics like injectivity, subjectivity, bijectivity, and like just put as much stuff in the equations as possible. Like, um, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's great. So let's not take a question while mention why, because let's say I ask this question to these kids, and some of they don't want them do not want to speak about it in front of everyone. You can probably talk to them separately and figure out which academy is a better place to work on this sort of problems. There are quite a few, so I will not take this question here, and I explained why. And then I'll go to another question, which is probably very easy to answer. Hurry, let's go to Nand. What about game theory?
Okay. I personally think for INMO it does help. I mean, this year's INMO P5 was game theory, as it's game theory in the combinatorics sense, not formal game theory, which I think is more nim game based, um, but more like the combinatorial game theory about strategies and like showing optimality of strategies is definitely very useful. If not at INMO, you're going to see it pop up here and there, maybe APM or maybe one of the TST problems, right? So it's definitely a good idea to do game theory separately because if nothing else, it builds an intuition on how do you show optimality, which is very helpful in a lot of different problems.
Fantastic. All right. So I think we are almost at the end of this discussion. I would add a couple of things that it was really whatever time you have spent with mathematics, it must have been very enjoyable. From Chinta's part, one of the things that we have seen over the years, since we have been working for a long, long time with IMO medalists, INMO medalists, and so on, if you want to pursue when you go to the undergraduate level, if you want to pursue research, or if you want to participate uh, in applied areas of mathematical sciences, then it is great to have good mentoring and good connections with great projects. And thanks, since we have been working for quite a long time, the alumni group of Chinta is quite deep, and you can find real good friends and real good mentors there. Today only I was discussing with Nand and Arjun in the other call when we were discussing university level applications and all. Uh, One area that is really exciting, that is unfolding, some of you like geometry, that is unfolding right now, is something called an Erlangen program in deep learning. So you can maybe Google it later. You can figure something out about it. It's just one program I'm talking about. It's basically the application of geometry in the domain of deep reinforcement learning. It's a very beautiful thing. It's happening right now, and I'm talking about it because I wanted to give you an example of something that can you can think about in the long run. And if you want to do something like that, maybe some of the people at Chinta would be very happy to work with you on that, and we would do some good work together. Right now, we will stop this session here. Thank you all for joining in. You and uh, if more questions come in, I will send it to you by email, and you can respond. All right. Thank you all. I'll end the stream. Thank you to the audience for joining in. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
All right.